they would always just, oh, she just loves to dance. No, that's hyperactivity. That's what that is. That is not, because I wasn't thinking first. I was just going. So it always got brushed off. Then as I became a therapist and started looking at, what are these diagnostic symptoms? What's the criteria and all this stuff? I could see why they would think that I didn't have it.
What's up, ADHD reWired listeners? We're nearing the end of December, which means the new year is just around the corner. And before we dive into today's show, I just want to give you all a heads up to keep an eye out in your podcast feed for a little something from Coach Kristin, who we'll be having a conversation with today. And speaking of coaching, we do have a registration event for our upcoming season of coaching groups today. So if you missed it, don't worry. It's not too late to get signed up for our winter season, but don't wait. Go to coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our winter interest list so you can join us for our next winter registration event on Thursday, December 28th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. That's Thursday, December 28th, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. That's the day before my birthday. And now, on with the conversation. Welcome back with another episode of ADHD reWired. Today's guest is Kristin Marts. You've probably heard Kristin on many of our Q&As. And, we keep talking about how come she hasn't been on the podcast, just her. And we've talked about this so many times that I kind of thought she was on the podcast. So here she finally is. Kristin Marts, thank you for being here.
I'm excited. I know it's very funny because you and we mention it when we're in meetings and stuff, and then it still gets kind of filed on that shelf back in the closet. And we go, oh yeah, we'll do that.
So we are doing that right now. We're recording this on, it's Friday on December 8th. So we just came out of the CHAD conference. Let's kind of back up a little bit because, I just said, let's just hit record and we'll introduce you sort of through the conversation. So you had your background, you went to college for musical theater?
Yes, theater. It was really an emphasis in dance, the way the program was set up. And it's where I got dragged onto the stage as a musical theater performer. I thought I was going to be all dance. And no, they had a lot of faith in my potential, I guess. And and it's what I love.
And so that was back in your 20s, right?
Yes, to start. Because I did like a typical ADHDer and dropped out, got married and had kids and then went back.
Okay. So you now have you're a licensed clinical social worker. So you have that. You live in Arkansas. And
Little Rock, Arkansas.
And you're you do play therapy.
I do play therapy, yeah. Still another ADHD thing, still not quite gotten the it's not called certification, it's like registration, all the credentials. So I'm working on cleaning that up. Yep. So that I can say I am a registered play therapist. Yeah.
And you are also an ADHD reWired coach. So if people don't know sort of your backstory with us, you first started as a member of our coaching groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then do you want to tell the story that led to you becoming a coach with us?
I was just going to say, because I got the dates in my head for sure. Went through the spring program in 2021. So that was season 24 with your group. I remember a couple of years before that, a friend coming to me and going, oh my gosh, a colleague too, going, Kristin, you got to listen to this podcast. You got to hear this question, this one thing question. And that was the main, seed of what she was trying to relay to me. And I did start listening to the podcast and I was like, oh, this is cool. And was in therapy already and decided one of the episodes I heard said something about, being ready for coaching and, kind of clearing the therapeutic. I don't know if you said mirror. We say in Santray therapy, we call it, cleaning our mirror. So that we can be prepared for what comes in the door to us too. So, every once in a while, the therapist has to go clear that mirror too, so that we're not mixing up a lot of our own shit with everything. And so that's kind of what I took to heart and did for probably about a year and a half. And then I kind of tiptoed to my husband and I go, hey, honey, there's this thing called coaching on ADHD and I'm worse right now. And, and mind you, I was diagnosed late. Yet, even as we reflected, he noticed. He was like, I'm sorry, I just don't know another word. Because I said, how do you think it is right now? And he goes, I just don't know another word. And you know that I know that you are great, at the world and at everything. He goes, the only word that keeps coming to mind is you seem incompetent right now.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, because you know what I mean? I just can't. And I said, no, I actually do. Because my life in the house and things like that was like worse. My kids were older. And what I learned is that, kids kind of provide you a lot of structure and everything. So in any case, I kind of was like, can I have this for my birthday? And he was like, if you really think this is going to help you, I will, yeah, we can spend the money on it, but that is not your birthday gift. He was like, no, that's not what that is. But, and I jokingly at the orientation said, I'm Kristin Marts from Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm a therapist and I want to be Eric when I grow up. And I was kind of just kidding, but I also had gotten to where every time I listened to the podcast, I was like, wow, how rewarding that must be to hear progress. Because as a therapist, we don't always get that. And sometimes it's a Polaroid snapshot with a client. We see them once, maybe once, and they disappear on us because of the fear that comes into play or the shame and guilt that the client may have. And so I was like, wow. And I work with children primarily. So, it was the idea of getting to work with adults who can like really convey progress and that sort of thing. I was like, this is so cool. And I was just trying to get a laugh. That's what I do. And and sure enough, there was one little hiccup. I was ready to be an admin and they said, well, they want you to be in the program for a while in the community. And I was in the community.
And the admin are the peer mentors. So people who have been through the program come back and they can be a peer mentor with us. Which is it's a volunteer position because we are big believers in the idea that to learn is to know, but to sort of teach and to support others is to understand. And I think we both agree on this idea that one of the best things we do for our own ADHD is this work.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you jumped in there and explained that because it's really pertinent to this part of my story is I was doing an event in the community that you were leading, Pomodoro Dance Party, and we were doing our 10 minutes of dance exercise and my knee gave out and I was like, what the hell just happened? And side note, learned I have EDS and that's probably where this comes from. No, Eric is not making you do really fancy tricks and where you can injure yourself. It's nothing like that. But I tore my ACL and I went into a pretty deep, like hide from everybody depression. I felt like my knee was rejecting my body. A dancer is who I am. It's like since before I can even remember my life is I've been in dance classes. My mom had me there very young. So my peer mentor, admin, we call them also, he reached out to me like during the course of this and he was like, hey, don't you want to be an admin? You've talked about that. We think you'd be pretty good. And I was literally hiding out. I wasn't even logging on to the events or anything. I had just escaped from the community. And I was like, yeah, damn it. I do want to do that. What the hell's wrong with me? And so I told him yes. And Eric contacted me and I got to be your admin for 2 seasons. The 3rd season, you had mentioned, hey, looking for a new coach. What if you go through this 3rd season and kind of be prepping, and learning more, kind of looking at it through that lens. And I was like, oh, I'm so excited. He knew how badly I wanted to coach and kind of fitting into his vision of, having therapists be in this role also to really support this full group of people. And I was so excited and so like honored and felt really respected because I was like, oh my gosh, he thinks I'm good enough to do this too. This is great. And 4 days before that season started, it was like, oops, we have a hole. Can you go ahead and do it now? And that just spoke to my whole, I would love to always work in an emergency room setting. Yes, I love that whole crisis. That's what I really loved about when I worked in schools with kids was the crisis need. And it almost sounds awful. I want to be around when the kid's in crisis.
But it takes out like you don't need to do any planning because there's no time to do any planning. You just jump in. And
That's a good point.
right, which is what
So,
was for at the Chat conference when the last 2 hours before it started,
yep.
Because we'd found out that there were too many people, and so both of us were off the list, and we were like, oh man, we were bummed out about it. And then when I found out 2 hours before, I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going to prepare anything. I was trying to, and I was and I realized, you know what? What do I do best? When it comes to performance, I improvise. That is what in my mind, I'm yes, I am this singer songwriter, but but what I really do well is improvise, and that's what I did, and it was great. It was so much fun.
Yeah, and it is, and I think that just really speaks to a lot of us with ADHD. It's what our minds do. As a theater performer. Okay, so I used to be a perfectionist with the dance and everything. And the way I was raised, my mom has, undiagnosed OCD, but it's very OCD. And it's attributable to her medical health, that's always been in need and having things in place and easy for her to access. But she, it kind of went into parenting too, that, we're all going to be OCD with you. So that turned me into a real hard-nosed perfectionist, a lot of guilt and shame all the time. And took it into, ballerinas. They say ballerinas are like that too. Well, just in dance in general, I would do that. I get into theater though in my later teen years, and somebody made a mistake on stage, and I'm the one who saved it, because it's I didn't know I had ADHD, but it's it activated. And now I love mistakes to happen in shows. I love to be the one to get to jump in and fix it, or to watch somebody else go, what are they going to do? And I actually kind of promote it when I teach kids. They get all worried, and I go, but it's okay. So what could you do if that happened? What do you do if you fall down? What do you do if your shoe unties? What do you do? Just do something.
It's funny. There's one thing that I really, it was, I think Matt Hallowell actually said that creativity is impulsivity gone right.
Ooh, I like that.
And it is. It's that's being spontaneous and being able to capture all the contextual stuff in that environment in a split second and make a extremely fast reaction to something. And it just works. It's one of those things where it's I don't know how it works, but it does. And it's awesome when it's pulled off well.
That's really making me reflect on that first year of coaching. So, thinking I was going to go through and look through that lens of the modeling, and knowing what I know now is that, I would have tried to be Eric in my coaching groups.
Right. And what did I always tell you? What did I tell you?
Not to. No, be yourself.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I would have probably tried to do, and I wasn't given that chance. So I got some really good, what felt like hard lessons, but not like tough love, not like somebody threw it at me. It was more of the perfectionist in me freaked out and came out. And I was I watched old sessions so I could go, okay, how is this presented? What is this concept exactly? Even though I'd been through the program and I had a good gist of all this. And then if I would, in the middle of the program, like a session, something would come up and it wasn't sitting right with me, I'd be okay, say whatever comes to mind. And I would say whatever comes to mind. And that's what would make it work. And so it was that kind of, I always call you say creativity. I always call it shooting from the hip, because it's interesting. You said impulsivity gone right, because there is a bit of a pause with that when I say shooting from the hip. I think, plan, but don't give myself any options. I just go with the first plan that happens, but I do know what I'm about to say or do. So that's really interesting to lay it out that way. But then I would go out of the session going, oh my God, that was a disaster, I think. And so I would rewatch it, and we would go in and do some coaching.
I remember after your first season, especially, you were every session you were rewatching and taking notes. And I thought that was incredible that how dedicated you were to doing that.
I think that comes, so I understand that people have a lot of, kind of apprehension, or just pure, don't put me on camera. I don't want to see myself. We would go to cast parties and they would play the show. They'd pick the best night and they'd play that show. And some of the people in the room, when they would come on stage, they would leave the room because they were no, I don't watch myself. And I'm up in front of the TV going, oh, I nailed that. Oh, damn it, I forgot to point that toe. Shoot. Okay. But knowing that the shows were done, I was okay with it. Or I might know, but I knew I missed that. And the next night I did it right. And so I was always pulling from it going, what can I learn from this?
What about the happy accidents? Where it's like you did something on accident, like, oh, but that was really good. I got to remember what I did there so I can do that again.
Yeah. Now, as a performer in musical theater, I'm thinking strictly of that. So you're choreographed. However, I fell one time. I remember doing Grease, and I walked off stage crying and boohooing. And later on, when I saw it, it looked like it was choreographed, which makes it kind of a happy accident in that, it was a new way to do this thing on the ground and then get back up. And that's what so I learned that watching those mistakes told me that I was telling myself lies about the mistake, which, that's kind of a practice that we talk about in here is what's the story we're telling in our head. And so I like watching and seeing what I'm doing. And I don't have this negative bend on it. I get more upset after the action rather than watching it and seeing what the reality is. So I kind of value the idea of being able to see the recording.
And it's our recording's a very honest feedback lens.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, especially if you are a negative Nelly to yourself. If you feel like an imposter a lot.
And isn't that so true, especially with creatives? I mean, I think this is very true with ADHD, but also especially creatives doing creative work. We are our harshest critic.
Yeah. It also reminds me, so I've always, recorded choreography and things. I ran my own studio for a few years in that stint between dropping out of school and finishing school later. And sometimes I will trip over on some of those recordings, something I choreographed on kids, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago or something. I'm going, I made up that. Whoa, that's really cool. That was so creative. And I'm like, and I almost don't believe it. And I don't know what to think of it completely, except that maybe when you're that impulsivity gone right kind of thing, maybe you're in a zone when you're like that. And the fun part of it is the not planning part and then seeing what comes out of it. But then you go back and you kind of create the plan around the impulsivity, if that makes sense. Because when I have a responsibility to the kids I'm choreographing on when it's in a studio of what are they learning? Am I giving them enough, challenge, but enough also sense of capability for what they're doing? So, because you've got to fill all those things. It's not just me, living room dancing, doing whatever I want and making up whatever I want. There's some other obligations there. So then you got to go back and kind of look at that framework around choreography and creativity. It taught me too to be creative with them, use collaborative ideas, and how I, as a 30-year-old, could still do that with 6-year-olds and make that work, and just know that there's no age with creativity, which I always think is really cool.
That's awesome. And I know part of what you're going to be doing with us, with ADHD Rewired, is there's going to be a new podcast in the network. We're going to take a quick break, though. And when we come back, we are going to talk about your ADHD Creatives podcast. So we will be right back. Support for this podcast comes from ADHD Rewired's award-winning coaching and accountability groups. Learn more and get started with your pre-registration process at coachingrewired.com. So you can join us for our next winter registration event on Thursday, December 28th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. As the holiday season whirls around us with its flurry of gift buying, decorating, and preparing for company, it's easy to lose sight of what's truly important: prioritizing ourselves. Whether it's the chaos of the festivities or just getting ready for the new year, no matter what you're doing this December, remember that self-care isn't just a seasonal gift. It's a year-round necessity. Not sure what year-round self-care looks like? Does daily and weekly planning overwhelm you, let alone planning for self-care and prioritizing yourself? This is where Coaching with ADHD Rewired can help.
This group is like a scaffolding for us to move from intention to action. And the scaffolding's above the muck and the stories and everything else. If you have a scaffolding in a building, you're renovating it. You could be renovating or renewing it. And that building is us. For me, the building project is trying to open the windows, increase the size of the windows. And when the size of the windows increase, more light gets in. And just as importantly, more of our light gets out.
I think that group is not about finding the support or the techniques to grind through the tasks and the difficulties that you've had in life, but it's giving you the push to relax into it, to be gentle with yourself, experiment, tweak, laugh, cry, and just like accept and be more open.
If you're thinking about joining this group, I've never liked the idea for myself of any kind of group coaching or therapy or support groups. I've always figured my difficulties were so severe that I needed the full attention of an individual coach or therapist, which I've done, and that I would not be able to get enough out of a group. However, group coaching through ARC has been more beneficial than I possibly could have imagined. It's been amazing being surrounded by people, including the coach, who all have ADHD.
Stop trying harder and try something different, and give yourself the gift of going into the new year with a focus on your personal growth and well-being. That's right, the new year is just around the corner, and you deserve to make 2024 your most fulfilling year yet. Consider this your invitation to dream big, create, or connect with your most important goals. Visit coachingrewired.com to add your name to our winter interest list so you can join us for our upcoming registration event next week on Thursday, December 28th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. Once you're on the interest list, you'll receive your invitation to begin the pre-registration process. That's coachingrewired.com to embark on a journey of growth with a supportive community that truly understands you. One more time, that's coachingrewired.com. And happy holidays, everyone. All right, we are back. So what we are going to introduce to you right now is the trailer that you made that is not even out yet, at least from this recording. And we're going to put it also, I think, additionally as its own thing on the podcast feed. But because we are here talking in this conversation, I wanted to share with listeners that. So is there anything you want to do to set it up at all?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's just the idea, though, that I wrote a parody song for one of the graduation parties, and you go, that would be such a great podcast. And then later on, you were like, yeah, so how's the podcast going? I'm like, what are you talking about? You go, didn't you know that was part of my vision for coaches to have some sort of social media thing? And I was like, no.
That's when I learned that, you have to communicate those things that are in your head. Whoops.
And I loved the idea. I have figured out that I've actually probably been parroting since I was 7. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Beatles song. Yeah. I used to sing that when I was 6 and 7 years old. Moosey in the Sky with Grandy. Those are my grandparents.
Aww.
So I might have been parroting for a long time. But figured out I was really good and really fast at it. And when you brought this idea, I was like, I get to do my creativity with my work. Yeah, I like this.
And I'm not sure how you're going to approach this on the podcast, but like I also was just fascinated by the speed at which you created parodies. Like
it's like a superpower.
It's amazing.
I will own that.
So in the trailer, Kristin gives a little bit of an intro to who she is, and we kind of have been talking about that here. So the last minute or so of this trailer is a teaser of the first parody. So let's take a listen. This is the trailer for the ADHD Creatives podcast.
Finally was a therapist in Little Rock. During this time was when I became aware. Boss after boss called me in to scold. Your notes are late, they repeatedly told. You're gonna lose your job, so beware. Decided to go to therapy, figured out that I have ADHD. Give me meds, I pleaded to my doc.
So, what was that like for you to make that?
To make that? Holy shit. So just getting this whole thing off the ground, it was probably just a year and a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, that you said, hey, that would be a great podcast. And, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, let's do that. And I think you thought that too. It'd be ready in 2 months or something. And I had to work through a lot of shit around this thing. I realized I did say, trying to learn how to do entertainment in this arena. I am super visual, and a lot of my humor and entertainment comes through providing visual cues. And that's not what radio is. And I've really had to chew on that and figure that and revamp. Then for the trailer specifically, I got out what I thought was the trailer, and it turned out to be this 14-minute thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's an episode. I'm confused. And one of my peer mentors, I had a lot of people, you and several other people, give me some feedback and great feedback. And they were all okay with that being, a trailer too. But one of them in particular, who I just adore, Janelle, she gave me a few questions, and it was like, bing, okay, this makes sense now, how to turn this into a trailer. She just knew the right questions to ask, knowing me the way she does. That's what turned this into like a 3.5 minute, more like a teaser than a whole trailer. And I think when I heard teaser, that made more sense to me too. And I liked that idea because that's kind of the me, the sneaky me, the surprising me, the want to surprise you with something.
Well, I know when you were first kind of starting to work on this too, that like you had this sort of grand vision of having all these different segments in every episode. I was like, so, we're I think at this point now 8 months into the planning of this. I'm like, so I'm wondering if we simplify this a little bit.
There's still the segments, but what I think I've turned in my mind, what is helping is to say I can have the segments, but it doesn't have to be a template for every single episode. And I think that's when I finally said, okay, I'm ready to release. I'm ready to get this rolling and be doing this as we go. Because that has been one of the biggest scares for me, is that idea of continuing doing it. You just keep rolling. And I didn't want to be another interview show, that wasn't going to give me my opportunity to provide entertainment. And the idea of writing a whole parody song every week, that is setting myself up for failure.
Yeah.
So that's where I came up with the idea of just segments, think like SNL or even Hee Haw back in the olden days, where it's little bitty, drops of segments. And so I have chats with some other creatives that we have in the can that have topics, so that I can pull from topics and kind of create a thread line throughout each episode. And then I play with some of my own passions like Star Trek and things like that. And I did my intro song and outro song. I did a parody for that. And so that was super fun because I like that bit of continuity too. Mm-hmm. That knowing, it's time for the show.
I know every once in a while when I mix or tweak my intro song or something, it takes a little bit of time for people to adjust to it. They're like, it's different. I memorized your intro and now it's changed. Like it's all going to be okay.
I think I really liked that. And I'm reminded, because I'm a kid of the 70s and 80s, all the TV shows, I'm a TV hound. I always have the TV on, even doing homework. And all the shows have songs, intros and outros. Yeah. And I know the words to probably every TV show, even if I didn't watch the show. I would know them. So that brought a lot of joy because it felt like my inner child creating my own tunes, like when I'd play School when I was little or play Stranded on a Desert Island. I felt like a little kid again playing, I'm going to create a radio show while I was doing that. So it was really fun. And I remember getting upset when they would change those on the TV. I'd be like, wait, they cut the song. Wait. And it's because they were wanting to put more time in the show. And I'm like, but I need the whole song. Not realizing it was a transition thing for me that helped me with ADHD, switching to the next show. Or knowing I could go to the bathroom and sing the song and still be there at the, in the moment of the song and get back in time for the show to start.
Are you someone that will watch the same movie like over and over again if you like it?
Hell yeah. Oh, yeah.
There are very few movies that I will do that with because it's like, yeah, I've seen this. Like, I need there's all these movies I haven't seen, and why would I spend my time watching a movie I've seen before? But there are definitely some exceptions to that.
Well, a lot of those movies bring me grounding. I don't mean security in the sense of, ooh, I'm safe. Security in the sense of, I think, somewhat timing. I think I've always used an innate sense of timing through like music, songs, commercials on TV. Like, nowadays the kids can turn on a streaming show and they could just sit there and they could be having to go to the bathroom, but they're already getting to the next show because it just keeps going. I knew I had 2 and 2, Chuck Willery on one of his Love Connection show. He'd go, we'll be back in 2 and 2. And so I knew commercials were 2 minutes, 2 seconds or something like that. 2 minutes, 20 seconds, something like that. And I'll be like, oh, I got 2 and 2. I got to go to the bathroom. I got to get my Diet Coke. I need mom to give me a sandwich. Whatever, whatever it was I had to do, and I had to do it really fast. And that gave me an innate sense of timing. Music does that too. So I think movies still do that. I can play it in the background, and as it gets to the end of the show and I'm working on something, because I can also tune it out. It's nothing that my brain has to go,
yeah,
what's happening? What's happening?
Whenever I hear people that say like they work better with the TV or something on in the background, I'm like, do you really? Is it just stimulating your brain? Because I don't know how people can work. And I know people can, but I don't know how people can work with background talking.
Well, I've been assessing it, and I actually do tune it out. And instead of someone who might go, what time is it? And look at the clock, I go, what's happening? Okay. And it's more innate in me. I guess that's the word.
Yeah.
I have more of a sense of time because I look at a clock and I go, okay, what's 20 more minutes? That doesn't mean anything to me, but I have a feeling and a sensation of, Spock just died. Oh shit, I've only got this much time left from the Star Trek movie.
That's probably one of the nerdiest ways I've ever heard to tell time.
Yep. Well, he always had the internal clock, so hey.
So let's talk about sort of this idea of how you bring your, because I think that a lot of us with ADHD are really good integrators. We integrate different aspects of our life and bring it, to the things that we love and enjoy. And I've seen that very much with you. So how would you say you are integrating your world as with your background in musical theater, your training as a therapist, you work with kids, and now as doing group coaching for adults with ADHD?
Well, the first thing I think of, and I'm not sure it's completely answering your question, is when you said integrate, that was one of the concepts that I wanted to bring to this podcast, is that I was not diagnosed until I was like 44 years old. Yes, I have a sister who had much higher needs and was very classic ADHD, but she was a girl in the late 70s. Oh, no, she can't. Yeah. So, and just high oppositional behaviors too. And I was the little angel, the good child, and trying to fix everything and fix everybody. And so when I would do things like run across the aisles in the grocery store, trying to do a leap across to reach from one end of the aisle to the next end of the, whatever you call those things, the shelving and stuff, without, jumping into somebody's basket or knocking somebody over, they would always just, oh, she just loves to dance. No, that's hyperactivity. That's what that is. That is not, because I wasn't thinking first. I was just going. So it always got brushed off. Then as I became a therapist and started looking at, what are these diagnostic symptoms? What's the criteria and all this stuff? I could see why they would think that I didn't have it. But I was also the kid in high school who I would try to read. I remember loving to read when I was younger. And what I remember loving to read the most was anything that was very, very first person, didn't include a whole lot of other characters. And then as the readings got harder, I preferred biography. That's very much a singular person. I don't have to worry about all the other.
Me too. It's actually really interesting. And I remember being in high school too, and I had to read books of lots of characters that if I did not I would clip papers to the back of the book, and I would have to write notes about each character because I would have I would read an entire book and not remember the main character's name.
Oh, I still watch movies and don't know their names. Yeah, that happens.
Full seasons of shows where the one person who who's the sister of, I'm like, I don't know the.
Or I make up some funny name based on something they did. The icy hothead in my family. I still do it to this day. Well, I got lucky in that I really understood how to write essays. And I was very involved in dance and still doing a lot of theater. And I was on the dance team at school. So a lot of extras, played softball, Girl Scout, all that stuff. So I was reading books, but I wasn't getting through first chapters. And I couldn't figure out why. I was like, but I love to read. What is going on? I'm also, as you can tell, love to talk. So I would, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, I would do the thing where I'd try to read it. I'd read the back. I'd grab Cliff Notes trying to understand it. And I would get a C on the test that said you read the book. Then I'd go in there and I'd be a big part. I like English. I like discussing, those concepts. And I'd be really good at all that. And I was really good at, they just want a basic template of essays. I'd go in there and score well over 100. I'd get the extra points. So it'd all even back out. And I was still making all A's and B, a few B's here and there. But I was struggling, but nobody else saw that. That wasn't a P. I thought something was just wrong with me, or I just wasn't trying hard enough. Didn't realize it, that there was something to that. I was always granted grace. 12th grade, my teacher gave out for like a termination of sorts at the end of the year. She gave out these special awards for people. I was late to her class like every damn day, first class of the day, and she would look the other way, and she got to doing my my award, and she was like, now this next student could be D Hall Queen, but if it weren't for me, she would be, something to that effect, and said that I was queen of the tardies, because it was always just right there, just getting in by hair. It wasn't super late. So that was kind of giggled at and laughed at. And I don't know if I don't understand why it was always so forgiven, why some of these things were so forgiven and rather not looked at for what's going on. Why? And I think maybe I just was able to conceal a whole lot more than I realized.
That masking piece.
Yeah. And didn't realize, and maybe leaning into, at my school was big enough to not know everybody, but also small enough to be an important person in that world. And I did the musical Oklahoma. I went up there and I lip sank to get in for the musical part because I said I was not singing out loud. But I auditioned against 3 other ballerinas and I got that ballet role that's on point. And oh my gosh, my world lit up after the first show or the school show because the guys were coming up going, how do you do that? How do you get up on those toes like that? And so all of a sudden I had this persona and I was captain of the dance team, the drill team. So I had this persona of, oh, she is really talented and creative. And I think that's what led to a lot of compassion, forgiveness for things like not getting something in on time, giving me a few extra days. Because we also had some other, athletes. We had some swimmers who were made it to Olympic trials. So our teachers, like I said, it was big enough to be a big school, but small enough to be able to go, well, these teachers have an investment with these kids. They invested with these kids. And I think I was one of them. But it didn't help me when I made it to college. Because then, oh my God, nobody was like caring that I was some dancer. They got a whole theater department full of. So it's not been all uphill. It's been up and down and valleys and up on the peak for a long time for different things. So it's been really, really weird. And when I found, not the podcast necessarily, but when I came into the room and I remember opening up during that big week, the big week where we really open up about vulnerabilities and everyone goes, yeah, me too. I went, oh my God. Okay, I get it. It's just been overlooked. It's been missed. We didn't know what ADHD really is back then. We just didn't know. So the creative side of me was really kind of pulled out of me. When I first started choreographing, when I first became a teacher, my dance teacher would go, okay, you're going to choreograph. I go, what do I choreograph? And she was like, well, what you're teaching them. I go, yeah, but what songs do I use? Well, you've got a whole selection. I mean, she was really, the only other word I can think of is forgiving, but she was also very patient with me. I go and do the summer show once I got into college and was told, Kristin, we did Godspell, and I did the song, I can see a sweat center sitting yonder, and they're acting like a pack of fools. And it was tap dancing and high tops, and I was dressed like Cyndi Lauper. kind of. And Miss Dot goes, "You choreograph it." And I go, "Huh?" So I go running back to my homeschool dance teacher, and I was like, she wants me, I don't know what to do. She still had to pull and pull. And she finally goes, "Kristin's not ready." She knew me well enough to go, "Kristin's not ready to do this, but she'll get there. And I'm going to give her some boost. I'm going to get her started." And I'm almost in tears thinking about that. They're both gone. But that idea of that I'm doing a podcast now that's all about creativity, when I never saw myself as creative back then. I didn't think I could draw. My family, they were all the visual artists. My dad could play musical instruments. I tried the clarinet and was like, still sat in a first chair at regional, but I didn't feel it, didn't understand what it meant, it didn't speak to me. And it was until I think I had my daughter, Kylie, that I was already getting there. I was getting there, but when I had her, she is severely autistic and can't talk. Talk about having to get creative. And that came natural because I needed to know what was she thinking? Was she hurting? Was she sick?
And what you're talking about too is, to me, is like the definition of when we talk about what are our gifts. Our gifts are the things that we do extremely well without like it feeling like it's any effort.
Yes. And without thinking about it, it just comes out. I agree with that because I don't believe in that whole superpower thing. And I know, and I want everybody to embrace whatever it is they embrace. If they embrace it as a superpower, keep it. I'm such a definition person that I can't hold on to it that way.
Yeah.
To me, it's something that I do without thinking about it. And I don't realize other people don't do it.
Yeah.
So the creativity really started blossoming even more with her. And I would stand, that's when I had my own studio, and I would stand in there and watch her in the mirror. Because they talked about kids with autism they line up their toys. They play with things that aren't things. And so that's not very creative. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Have y'all ever sat down and just watched them? I watch her line up toys, and she would line up paint bottles. And I was like, whoa, how does she decide which color goes where? Because if I go and flip them, she'd come back and fix them. And I'm like, where people would see perfectionism and rigidity in that, I messed with her creativity. For whatever reason, that's how I read that. And then I would watch her move and watch her look at herself. Experts would tell me, well, she doesn't like soft touch. She doesn't like, don't look her in her eyes. She doesn't like looking in her eyes. I'm like, are you kidding me? She is in her eyes every day and then comes to look at my eyes. And she does butterfly kisses, and butterfly kisses generally on the cheek. She does eyelash to eyelash. And we'll do them with lots of people she knows. So, I'm like, man, y'all need to get out of your box because
I mean, it's so interesting too, as you know, that my son who's 12 is on the spectrum, and being that I used to work clinically with people with autism, and I used to go to all the conferences and all this, and just sort of stepping away from that professionally for a decade, and then kind of like, dipping my toe sort of back in there a little bit for various reasons. I'm like, stuff's changed. Like even the way people are thinking about autism. So I remember when I first started getting into really going to the conferences, and I would sort of compare like the ADHD conferences to the autism conferences. And like they just felt so different. The ADHD felt so much more science-based and rigorous. And and like with the autism conferences that I was going to, like there was a lot of just like, are you kidding? Just wackies kind of like stuff. I'm like, this is not science-based. Like this is dangerous, you know? But it's like, also, it felt like it was feeding on all these fears of parents because, they have their kids who it's like, oh my God, what can I do to help my kid? Right? And there weren't answers. So I think, in the last at least decade anyways, and I know that your kids are a bit older than mine.
Yeah. Well, I went back to school based on this. I needed a lot. We had a lot of, that's a whole nother podcast of all kinds of things that went wrong and that ended up being right for me. And so I decided to go, have another kiddo that has issues too, growing up, severe speech delay, again, another speech thing. And then my son with a second marriage. So we have 2 girls, and then my son with my second husband. And, but I've always said my girls have 4 parents because their father was with someone else too. And we're all still part of their lives. So that was great. And we really needed that for these 2 kids. So I had someone step up for me and come to an intervention meeting with school staff, and they had the downtown school staff there too. It was a big deal. And I thought, damn, that's amazing that she did that for me. I can do that. We need to make this happen more. And so I went back to school for this and went into social work based on my second kiddo's therapist saying that to me. Go to the social work department. I was thinking psychology. I didn't know. She goes, that's what I am. I didn't know what social work. I thought social work was just
right.
the BSW stuff.
Right.
Didn't realize.
The DCFS workers that are coming to take your kid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or helping you with food or, that sort of thing too.
Right.
And so went and did that. And I have new branches on this tree of creativity. What I realize is, damn, I am good in the moment with these kids. And that's why I like working with the kids with developmental delays on the spectrum, because their brain has more scaffolding and Swiss cheese like. And now as we learn more about ADHD, really falls into that game too. And so the anxiety piece, all those kind of 4 things, a lot of storytelling is magical. A lot of puppet play. It's all creative. And I just feel like, I just did the VIA character study test. I had not ever heard of this. I know it's so weird how many things I miss with my brain. And sometimes I think that's a little autism brain sometimes for me. But it was one of the workshops we went to at Chad, turned me onto it. Mm-hmm. Guess what it said my number 1 character trait is?
Creativity.
Yep. And I was like, oh my
surprised.
gosh, keeps validating me. So now it's helping me to lean into. I did a presentation this morning, just a little hour one. And I'm like, I did it. Yay. And I just leaned into being okay with being creative about it, not worrying about all the specific facts and that sort of thing. So I'm really excited about this podcast.
It is funny how much I do a lot of content creation, obviously, when I just sort of get out of my own way and just allow myself to just be when I did the presentation on AI, it took me a while to really conceptualize how I wanted to do this. And after the first practice run of it, I'm like, oh, that went 2 hours and this is an hour presentation and I'm supposed to be 15 minutes for questions. I'm like, okay. So I cut most of the content from it and decided to do more interactive demonstrations. And even during the presentation itself, where there was a tech glitch, it actually made for a really kind of fun moment, in the presentation.
The mistake during the show.
Right.
Yep.
And it's and you roll with it. And it's to be able to, and not even just using some kind of self-deprecating joke. It's and tech is great. And sometimes it also doesn't work.
Yeah.
And this is part of the message, which is really important to understand about this. All right. I'm looking at the time. We have a few more minutes. I need to take one more quick break. When we come back, I just want to hear, what's your very favorite thing about coaching? So I'll let you think about that for a moment. And we will be right back. And now it's time for your favorite part of this show. It's time for an ad for a product that doesn't actually exist, but we wish that did. Introducing the latest must-have for the ADHD community this holiday season, Jingle Track Santa, the ultimate holiday assistant for those who jingle all the way, but sometimes forget why they started jingling in the first place. Jingle Track Santa is a cheerful, life-sized talking Santa fully equipped with the latest Santa Synapse technology. It's not just decoration, it's your personal holiday helper.
Ho, ho, ho! Don't forget, you have a gift wrapping session scheduled in 15 minutes.
Worried about losing track of your holiday tasks? Jingle Track Santa is here to remind you, whether it's sending out those last-minute cards, buying the turkey, or even remembering where you hid the presents. He's got your back.
Remember, the tape is in the top drawer. Yes, the one next to the fridge.
But wait, there's more. Jingle Track Santa is also equipped with Karaoke, a built-in karaoke system that plays only the catchiest holiday tunes, ensuring you stay energized and entertained during those long holiday prep sessions. And for those moments when you need a little extra holiday cheer, just press Santa's nose and he'll share an uplifting, ADHD-friendly holiday joke or quote.
Why did the ADHD elf go to school? To improve his elf-esteem. Ho, ho, ho! Get it? Elf-esteem. Ho, ho!
So make your holiday season merry, bright, and on track with Jingle Track Santa. Available now at all imaginary stores near you. Jingle Track Santa, because the best gift is remembering where you put all those gifts in the first place. And while Jingle Track Santa isn't actually real, what is real is that you can get yourself the gift of coaching and all the other things that we do here at ADHD reWired. Whether it's listening to the podcast and sharing it with loved ones, joining us for some virtual co-working in our Adult Study Hall community at adultstudyhall.com, joining our free Facebook community where you can talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about, whether it's this episode or other topics, or our coaching and accountability groups, or become a patron. Because here at ADHD reWired, we know how real support and community is to thriving with ADHD. Find everything you would want about ADHD reWired at ADHDrewired.com. And I know I mentioned this last week, my birthday's coming up, and I'm really looking for a maybe in a medium or a large, a rating and review on an Apple Podcast or any podcast player that accepts reviews. That would be so lovely. Gift receipts not required. And now, back to the third half of the show with Coach Kristin Marts. All right, we are back. We got a few minutes left here. I know that we each have things scheduled in the next 20 minutes. Okay, Kristin, you've been doing group coaching now for, this is your
second year. I've got one more season and completes a second year. No, wait.
Okay. So I was going to say like 6th or 7th season or something like around there.
Yes, I'm in my 7th season. Yes.
What's your favorite thing about it?
As I thought about it when you went to Brett, there's so many different things that could be favorite. And I did the thing of I went to the VIA top characteristic, being creative, and it matched the first thing that popped in my mind. I'm a metaphor girl, and I know for all of you out there, not everyone is, but I think everyone knows about the whole metaphor about the onion and the layers. And I love that the connection is my highest core value. That's the one I value the most. And when I get to sit there and keep helping a client peel back the layers, and even to the point where it stumps them for a minute, or they go, this is what I say to Eric when he does it to me. I go, oh, shut up. Damn you. Why don't put that layer back? I'm like, because that's when magic is felt, even if it hurts a little bit at first. And what I know is that even if that person starts crying because that onion's making them cry, it's hit something and they're finding something, and maybe they don't have the answer right then, but I know it's coming and it's given them at least some direction. And that's happened for me. And I just want to share very quickly, someone did that to me at the Chad party, and it was unbelievable. I still hoard supplies. I'm still working on cleaning out my physical environment. I hold too many things thinking I'm going to need it. And I was telling her, I just met her, and she is a organizing, what's that word when you got to go back and relearn? It's an R word,
rehabilitation?
Not rehabilitation, remediation. Okay. She's an organizing remediation expert. And I was telling her about my onion and that sort of thing. And because she said, what's holding me back on really, clearing this out and doing it? And I go, I don't know. I just keep trying to peel the onions back, and I can't, there's a lot of emotion. She goes, I think there's a lot of emotion. I said, I know there's a lot of emotion attached to it. She Googled something about ways to cut an onion to help you not cry. And I went, oh, and it's making me start to cry right now. It was the idea that what she was telling me is I don't have to peel or cut that onion the same way that I keep trying to do it. Maybe there's a way to do it to work around the tears, so I can work on whatever the tears are coming in therapy, and not try to use these things to hold on to whatever the emotion is that I'm holding on to with it. And I was just like, whoa, she just really amped up my metaphor. I want to add too before we go. So my grandfather owned radio stations in Tennessee. He's been gone for, I don't know, a good 15 years, I think. And my grandmother is still around. She just turned 96, 96, and still very healthy. And I learned to been from bucket list stuff. I've been like capturing her stories nowadays. I pull my phone out when I'm with her and capture these stories because they're amazing.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, and that's on my bucket list. So I do work on my things. I have memories of going to visit them. We've lived in Little Rock for a long time. We have to drive back to visit them. Getting to go get on my uncle's lap and get on the radio and say, "Hi, I'm Kristin." And my sister go, "I'm Kelly. We're from Little Rock. We just want to say hi and thanks for listening to WSKT."
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so I think it's so fun.
You ever thought about doing voiceovers for puppets? Because I think you would do an amazing job at that.
My most recent song, it's about RSD, rejection sensitivity, and it does have two voices to it. One is I'm going to create a video out of it. It's the inner voice, but it's the helpful inner voice that I'm listening to in my head. And it's supposed to be reflective in the mirror, and the mirror is singing to me too. So I'm going to have some fun playing with the videography of this. And the other one is me acting out the RSD and dancing to it and everything. But I have two different voices in that recording. And I learned how to put it all together and layer it. It was so much fun. So I'm learning how to do it, Grandy, wherever he is, the radio stuff.
I don't know if there's any recordings of those, but how fun would that be to like insert that into one of your episodes?
I had considered turning the video into it being a puppet, being the inner voice. I thought about that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love that.
I do have an idea. You talked about my aspirational vision of this podcast. One of them is to have Percy and Penny. Percy and Penny are little skit characters in the show. And so they will be forthcoming, but they're not quite here yet, to help them demonstrate or illustrate audibly an ADHD problem. And that gives me a prompt into coming as the voiceover of the clinician and giving some information around that. So yeah, it's there, and I would love to do voiceover work.
It's so fun. And you have a lot of talent with just the way you express yourself. Kristin Marts, thank you for finally coming to do this and get you on the podcast. It will. I am sure it will not be the last time. I can't wait for your podcast to officially drop. It's I'm
offering a lot of interactive pieces, so to connect on the website too, and offer and share your art and your creativity as part of the podcast. It's what I really want, that connection piece.
So people want to be a part of your podcast and contribute to that. How can they reach you and do all that? So here's what we'll do. We're going to get the URL and then just insert your voice and just add to it right here.
Yeah.
You can learn more about Kristin by heading to the website at ADHDrewired.com, going to the coaching tab at the top of the page and clicking on Meet Our Coaches. And coming soon is the website for the ADHD Creatives Podcast at the ADHDcreativespodcast.com, which might already be live, not 100% sure, but if it is, check it out. That's the ADHDcreativespodcast.com. And links to more information about Kristin and the website will be added in the show notes.
Thank you so much, Kristin.
Thanks, Eric.
And that's all for today. Thank you, Coach Kristin Marts, for having this conversation with me. And I'm so excited for your podcast to launch in the new year. Keep an eye out in your feed for upcoming previews or check out ADHDrewired.com for updates. You can even find Kristin hanging out in our free and secret Facebook community, which is free to join at the website by clicking on the community tab. And remember, if you want to get more info about our coaching groups, have a few more questions, and are ready to start your new year by starting with you, go now to coachingrewired.com to get registered for our next winter registration event next week on Thursday, December 28th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. And if you want to support the show and want some bonus content or want an uninterrupted listening experience of this podcast, consider becoming a patron at $5 a month or more at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. We even offer a monthly group coaching call for patrons at the $25 a month level. So if you're interested, join us on Patreon so you can join us for our next Patreon-only monthly coaching call in the new year on January 23rd. Otherwise, support for becoming a patron can start at any amount that works for you. Big thank you to all of our patrons who support the show. Also, we have learned that some patrons have their credit cards, I guess, have been canceled or there was an issue with Patreon. So go check to make sure that your monthly contributions are still being delivered. Please and thank you. We really do appreciate your support, because remember, this podcast is free to you, the listeners, but it is not free to produce. So if you are getting value out of what we're doing here, consider becoming a patron. Thanks again for listening. And if you celebrate the holidays, then happy holidays, a safe, happy, and healthy new year to all of you. Thank you again to Kristin for joining me today, and we will see all of you next week.